Welcome back to the channel. I'm Cody Burton, your source for all things Colorado real estate, and today we're taking a bit of a break from our normal property tours to talk a bit about the market as a whole. I've been having more and more conversations lately with clients talking about, there's a possible recession. Is the housing market going to be affected? Are we going into a bubble? Are we going into another crash? What's going on? There's a lot of uncertainty. And so I wanted to take a minute, make a video to kind of break down a few reasons why I don't really see a crash coming in the housing market. All right, number one, it's really simple, and that is supply. According to Freddie Mac, we have a housing shortage of almost 3 million homes here in the US. And we also haven't seen builders go back to 2008 levels or pre-2008 levels of building. So not only do we have a shortage already, we aren't building to keep up with demand. So that shortage is only going to continue. And even if we see a mass ramp up in the next few years, where we see many, many more housing developments coming online, it's going to take quite a few years to build back that shortage until we have a surplus. Also, on top of that, we saw a lot of people exit the workforce during COVID, and that included a lot of tradespeople. Tradespeople, very skilled professionals. A lot of them were getting older. When the pandemic hit, they thought about retirement. A lot of them haven't come back to the workforce, probably aren't coming back to the workforce, or the ones that have chosen to be part-time or more selective with the kind of jobs they're taking on. So that's further exacerbated the problem, where not only are builders choosing not to build in the way that they were in 2006, but they also can't because they don't have the labor force. Right, number two. If you've taken any sort of economics class, you've probably guessed we talked about supply. Now we're going to talk about demand. And demand is still very high, and there's no indication that that's going to creep down anytime soon. Even with rates creeping up a bit, they are at historic lows. 4 or 5% is still a really low interest rate historically, and we're not seeing a huge quell on demand. Part of that is that 30% roughly of homes purchased, at least here in Colorado, have been new home buyers, meaning that these are not people who are coming from a home previously, and therefore they're coming from renting, they're coming from another state, and they're not adding to the inventory when they move because they don't have a house to sell. Being that we're at about 30% now, and being that millennials and younger make up about 50% of the US population at this point, we're only going to see that trend continue and first-time home buyership go up, meaning that demand is going to continue to be strong. All right, number three. This is probably the conversation I've had with my clients most over the last several weeks, and that's what about a recession? If you pay attention to the news, if you're listening to what's going on, we're hearing more and more talk about a possible recession. Depending on who you listen to, we might be in the very early stages of a recession already. But typically, recessions do not equate to a housing crash. And I know that sounds crazy. Everybody thinks about 2008, but I'm going to throw a graph up here on the screen that kind of illustrates the point. 2008 was a little bit of an outlier with how badly the housing market was affected by the recession. You can see typically that's not the case. Housing typically slows down during a recession. We see lower appreciation. We might see a flattening, but we don't typically see any sort of mass crash in the housing market just because of a recession. And going back to 2008 versus now, people aren't using their homes like ATMs the way they were in 2008. We see a lot less leverage. The average household has more liquidity. They have more money in the bank. They have less debt. They have better credit scores. They're overall more financially healthy than they were in 2008. So there's a lot of differences there, even down to the individual family, that makes a housing crash like 2008 a lot less likely. Also, it's a lot harder to get a mortgage. So the people that are buying, the people that are in these homes are a lot more qualified to have them, making some sort of crash that much less likely. So number four, and that is COVID itself. COVID has changed the way people want to live, people want to work. we're just in a totally different time with people working remotely, having that freedom to live where they want and not be tied to a job. So here in Colorado, we're seeing a lot of people coming from the West Coast, whether that's the tech sectors in California or Seattle or Portland, where things are very, very expensive. And so we've seen a lot of people moving here for that work from home lifestyle to be able to be close to the mountains while also still making really high wages. According to the New York Times, the most likely people to relocate while keeping a job are the top 10% of income earners. And typically they are moving from those really expensive locations. So I know we've seen home prices absolutely skyrocketing here the last few years. I think we are going to see that slow down some. But in reality, a lot of the people that are moving here, Colorado and Denver, even though it is very expensive, is less expensive than where they're moving from. So they're going to be more willing to pay those high prices in order to buy here because compared to where they're coming from, it's still not that expensive. So that's it for this week. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you are looking for a home here in Colorado, I would love to help you find it. If you're looking to sell, maybe Colorado has gotten a little too expensive for you, I can help you do that as well. My phone number and email will be in the end of the video as well as in the description below. So that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your week. And until next week, bye-bye.